Buenos días, buenas tardes, good morning, good afternoon. My name is Ernesto Mejia, and I am part of the Cool Speak family, and I would like to welcome you to the 2022-2023 McDonald's Hacer Scholarship Session virtual featuring Katya and Hacer. Again, my name is Ernesto Mejia, and I'm part of the Cool Speak family. And if you are here today tuning in, that means that you're probably interested in winning a scholarship to pay for college and or learning more about an amazing individual that I've had the honor to work with this year, Katya and who you will hear from in a little bit. However, before we begin, if you're tuning in now, later, recording, let us know where you're tuning in from, what brought you here today, and your interest in the scholarship. That'd be great. Throughout the session, we'd love to encourage you to post on social media using the hashtag that you see beneath me, Hacer more. Use that hashtag to post a picture of something that you see, a quote, something that we said, anything that you would like. Okay? Now, let me go over some of the basics as to why we are here and what we are trying to learn about. Okay? The McDonald's National Hacer Scholarship, is 30 scholarships and a grand total of $500,000. Okay? $500,000 is a nice chunk of change, I know. Now, it started on October 18th and it ends February 6th, okay? Please, I'm going to reiterate this like 8 times. Please do not wait until the last minute to then try to submit your application. You're not going to get your recommendation letter on time, you're not going to get your official transcript on time, and you're going to miss out on an opportunity to win a scholarship. To get that application, I have to repeat this over and over again, especially when we're in person as well as when we're virtual. Go to www.mcdonalds.com/hacer. If you don't speak Spanish, you can go to www.mcdonalds.com/Hacer. Either one of them will work for you, okay? We want you to take advantage of this opportunity and get some of that scholarship money, okay? Here's the breakdown. It's a nice chunk of change, y'all. Even if you get a $5,000 scholarship, imagine how many hours of work you have to put in to get $5,000 back to you. Clear. That's a lot. So 20 of those will be for $5,000. But look at the top 2. I know those are the ones you go to right away because that's where the big money's at. 2 of those scholarships will be for a grand total of $100,000. Imagine yourself going back home, telling mommy, papi, tia, tío, abuela, I don't know who you go back home to. The McDonald's Hacer National Scholarship just granted us a $100,000 scholarship. What would that do for you? How would it change your life? How would it make you feel? Imagine how it would make your parents feel. We get to work with students all over the country. We're very blessed and fortunate. And whenever we ask them who they want to take care of, they immediately say their family. Mom, dad, mommy, papi. Imagine if you took this stressor off of their shoulders. Because trust me when I tell you right now, students, your parents are worried already about how they're going to pay for that education. Trust me when I tell you that they're wondering, should you even go? How are we going to do it? Can we get a loan? Is FAFSA going to take care of it? When there are scholarships out there trying to help you, take advantage of this opportunity, okay? www.mcdonalds.com/hacer. Here are the requirements, and they're not very difficult, okay? A high school senior, 2.8 GPA. I'm going to repeat that because some of you are like, really? 2.8 GPA. That's the requirement. 2.8 GPA. I wish I could tell you that when I was in high school I even qualified, but I don't like lying. But 2.8 GPA makes a lot of students eligible for this opportunity. Younger than 21 years of age, legal U.S. resident, or DACA students. DACA students, you qualify this year. Take advantage of this opportunity. Eligible to attend a 2-year or 4-year college or technical school, vocational school, but that's accredited, of course, and 1 parent of Hispanic descent. Now, when I say 1 parent of Hispanic descent, I literally had a student say this to me, hence why I bring it up all the time. Student came up to me like, hey, so both my parents are from Mexico, so I have 2 parents of Hispanic descent. Does that increase my odds of winning? No, it just makes you more Hispanic. Like, I don't know what else to tell you. One parent of Hispanic descent is what the requirement calls for. If you have two, good for you, you're more Hispanic. That's all it does. It does not increase your odds of winning the scholarship. Let's make sure we're clear on that, okay? Now, a lot of y'all like taking pictures of yourselves, of your food, of the sky, and you miss out on what you need to do to qualify for the scholarship. Take a picture of the requirements, take a picture of the URL, the www.mcdonalds.com/hacer, so that you know where to go, okay? Now, the criteria. I'm going to make this simple for you. A lot of scholarships have pages upon pages of requirements, criteria. This is the basic to this, okay? Academic achievement. Of course, they want students that are doing well. Is a 4.0 required? No, we already covered that in the requirements. 2.8 GPA. That's what they're looking for, 2.8. So academic achievement also means maybe you took some tougher classes. So if you're an underclassman, freshman, sophomore right now thinking, you know what, but the easy classes are just nice. They're relaxing. I get to chill. That doesn't help your odds of winning scholarships come your senior year. So make sure that you keep that in mind. Financial need, of course. For those of you that are unaware, there are institutions of higher education in this country that are willing to pay for your education based upon your family income. $50,000, $65,000, $75,000. But you have to research them to figure it out. Are they looking for students that are involved, that have good academic achievement? Of course they are. But they're also looking for the financial need and community involvement. It means volunteering. It means getting involved in your community. In some of your schools, there's a requirement. Make sure that you do that. The way I explain this to students is, for example, if your school has 10 hours of community service required every school year, so that by the time you graduate, you have 40. Imagine if you double that up. If you volunteer 20 hours a school year, and you end up with 80 hours of community service, and you highlight that in your application. My school requires 40 hours of community service. However, I was taught to go above and beyond, and I truly do care about my community, so I put in 80 hours. Here's the name of the person that you can verify this with. Here's the organization. Here's an email. That stands out. Trust me. Okay? So that's the criteria. Now, I want to give you a few additional resources because my time here is super short. I'm not the feature here. I am just here to host and give you some information about the SED scholarship. Again, I'm going to say this again. Where do you go to get the scholarship? To apply, www.mcdonalds.com/hacer. Seniors, if you have not applied for your FAFSA yet, do it yesterday. Please. FAFSA is on a first come, first serve. If you haven't done your financial aid, that's the second site there, www.fafsa.ed.gov. Please, please, please go and apply. Hispanic Scholarship Fund has just an array of scholarship opportunities available for you all. Big Future through College Board is a phenomenal resource, just as CAPEX is, and those will help you determine what schools are looking for, what you can do. I remember when my son was doing it, it even told him, how much it weighs working versus being involved in school. All of these sites give this information. Of course, our site from our CoolSpeak family, coolspeak.com as well. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you a few additional resources and then we're going to move on. Okay? So for my African American community, we have the Black and Positively Golden Scholarship. For my Asian Pacific Islander community, we also have the APIA Scholarship. But also, if you work for McDonald's, there's a program called Archway to Opportunity. And it's there to help you out, to get a GED, to learn English as a second language, and to help pay for some of your college tuition. So make sure that you're asking if you work at McDonald's about the Archways to Opportunity program. Okay? Those are very important, good resources for you to be able to use. Now, I don't know if you've noticed, but I've thrown that URL up there more than a few times because it almost never fails. As soon as I'm done speaking, someone asks, hey, so where do I go and apply for that scholarship? Like, what do I need to do? I told them like 10 times, like I'm telling you right now. Go to www.mcdonalds, facebook.com/hacer. Okay? Now, just a few reminders before I move on. One, please post on social media using the hashtag #AcerMore. Two, post any questions you might have, not necessarily for me, but for our featured speaker, Katya Chazarreta, and so we can get to them at the end. Okay? Now, that being said, I would like to introduce a video piece of our featured speaker for today, just so that you can get an idea of how amazing this individual is. Again, we've had the fortune to work with her a couple of times this year, and her story is outstanding. What she's done is amazing. But to me, on a personal note, I appreciate humility and being humble. That's how I was raised, and that means a lot to me. And I see this in this individual as well. Let's go to this video piece so you can get an idea of who I'm talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, anyone tuning in, I would like to please introduce you to Katya Chazarreta, who was a former McDonald's crew member. I just want to make sure that you heard that right. A former McDonald's crew member. I love that about her story. Who recently made history as the first Mexican-born woman in outer space. She recently partnered with McDonald's for her biggest mission yet, as you saw there in the video, inspire Hispanic students to pursue their higher education dreams. Katya has been a guest speaker during several McDonald's Hacer education workshops and has met one-on-one with students at select high schools. I've seen these students because they keep on asking me, did I get in? Did I get in? Do I get the one-on-one? I don't know. I'm not in charge. We just told you how to sign up. She's inspired millions with her out-of-this-world story and is here today to share her journey firsthand and encourage you to believe that anything is possible, especially when it comes to pursuing your higher education dreams. Ladies and gentlemen, some snaps, some applauses, whatever you want in the chat. Let's give it up for Katya Chazarreta.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And thank you so much, Ernesto, for the introduction. So, yes, I worked at McDonald's. I started my career at a McDonald's, and it is the thing that I am the most proud of in my life because my life started out difficult. Everything started out a little bit different. I didn't really plan for things to go that way. When I was growing up, I always wanted an education. I always wanted to go to school. Unfortunately, my mom had to live through a pretty abusive relationship, and us as well, through my dad. And so the most important thing to my mom was always for her daughters to get an education and for her daughters to be independent and for us to always be able to get out of any sort of difficult or messy situation. And so I'm growing up and I'm hearing these words from my mother, and I'm seeing the reason, because of my father, and I really take them to heart. It is very important for me to get that education, but the reality is different. The reality for a lot of us is much more complicated than that because school is expensive. That is just the way that it currently is, especially in this country. And so I'm getting closer to the point where I'm supposed to go off into college, and I don't have the money for it. My parents are going through a very messy and emotional divorce. And for the first time in my life, my family, my mom, my siblings, and I are left without a home. We are left without a car. We are left without access to any bank accounts. And all we could take with us were just a few belongings that we could fit and in the car before my dad eventually found out that we had taken it and took it away, which was the case. That is what happened. So we loaded up what we could. For me, it was some clothes, some books, and my school materials. For my siblings, it was the same. We couldn't really take much furniture or anything like that. And so that's what we did. We went to my mom's friend's house. And that is where I had to make the choice of what am I going to do? I am supposed to go off to college next fall. So we go into that first summer right before I'm supposed to make my decision of college, and I have to decide, do I go off on my own? Do I apply for loans, get a bunch of jobs, and then just try to figure out this whole education thing? Or do I stay here? Do I help my family? Do I make sure that my family is going to be okay and I figure out another way? So, as a Latina, family is the most important thing to me. And I knew that I couldn't leave them like that, knowing that I was the only one at that moment that had a job. And it was my job at McDonald's. So it is because of that job that my mom got the courage to leave the situation. And after doing so, I couldn't leave her with it. So I decided to enroll in a community college. And my mom started cleaning houses. I started helping her walking dogs. I was doing tutoring. I was grading papers. I was helping people with their homework. And I was just doing any sort of odd job that you could imagine on top of my job at McDonald's to try to pay for rent, bills, and the tuition at my school, the books, and then also anything that my siblings might need because they are both still in high school. And I do have an older sister with mental and physical disabilities who also needs her medicine and has a lot of other medical needs. So it was very, very difficult. And I remember that I was waking up at 5 a.m. every morning. I would go off and take my sister to school, go to school myself, go to work after school, come out of work. I would get home at around maybe 9 or 10 p.m. And then I would have to study and do my homework until about 2 or 3 a.m. And I would do it all over again and all over again. And it was extremely difficult. There were so many moments when I felt like there's no way I'm going to get through this. There's no way this is ever going to get better. There's no way I'm actually going to finish this education, knowing that there's so much pressure on my shoulders from everyone and everything you can imagine. It just felt like the weight of the world was on me in that moment. And I did get through it. I was at this community college and I applied to my top universities with a 4.0 GPA. I had founded 2 clubs. I had won math competitions. I had volunteered at my local science museum. I had gotten an internship there. And to this day, I cannot tell you how it is that I did all of that because I was able to do everything I needed to make sure that I was going to get this education. Not only that, but I was taking care of my family along the way as well. I never let go of them. And so that little girl that had that dream of being an astronaut, being an engineer, and who at 7 years old said the words for the first time, I will go to space, was now having to face the reality of how hard it was going to be for someone that wasn't born into a life that was going to be able to provide these resources. I was going to have to get them on my own. I knew that if I wanted this, I was going to have to find the way. And not many people were willing to help me at that point. So I decided that what I needed to do, and the most important thing that I needed to do, was find a scholarship. Because if I wanted to go to the universities I had applied to, which were UCLA, UC Berkeley, I knew and I understood that I did not want to take out loans. I understood how predatory they can be and how harmful they can be, especially to someone that is barely starting from scratch. I knew I needed a scholarship and I knew I needed a big one. So I dedicated for months 10, 15, 20 hours a week to only applying for scholarships. And I took it very, very seriously. I did all of my research, I gathered everything I needed, and then I was sending out application after application after application, because we should not get discouraged from the rejection. Rather, we need to keep looking. If you get discouraged and decide, I'm not going to apply anymore, then that's it. You're not going to get it. You're not going to get this education. You're not going to continue. You're not going to be able to come out of this journey debt free. And it really doesn't take that much. It just takes a little bit of effort from you, because there are so many organizations and there are so many scholarships out there that are begging students to apply. There is so much scholarship money out there in this country that goes unclaimed because of people who feel that they're not going to get it, so they don't apply. And there are specifically scholarships designed for people like us, like this one. The Hacer scholarship was designed with us in mind. So please, please apply. I definitely didn't think I was going to get it. I definitely didn't think I deserved it or that I was worth receiving something like this, but I did. I received a national scholarship that not only covered my tuition, not only covered my books, it not only covered my housing, it also covered my food. It covered all of my bills. It covered my car payment. And it even had a little extra stipend for recreation. So this scholarship was also, on top of all of that, giving me money so that I, for once, could go out and relax, could go out and have fun, because they understand the importance of being well rounded and the importance of taking care of yourself along the way. And the importance of it for somebody like us who has had to work and fight their way through pretty much our entire lives. So, this scholarship completely changed my life. It finally put everything into perspective for me, and it finally allowed me to realize that all of the sacrifices and all the hard work was actually having a result. I wasn't just working really hard and struggling through my life to continue to do that. I was working hard and struggling through my life to get out of that. And that is the difference here, that I understood that education was the only thing that was going to free me. So I took it very seriously. So eventually I get to UCLA. I am on a full ride. I am not paying for absolutely anything. Um, I get there in my first 2 weeks. I only had $5 in my bank account before my scholarship money came in. And so I was eating 1 cup of noodles a day. That is all. And towards the end, I had a little bit of money left still. So I splurged and got myself 1 bag of microwave broccoli. And that is all I ate that day. And it's so interesting now to think back on those times and how resilient I really was and how determined I was to get through it. Because when I was sitting there just eating my cup of noodles and desperately wanting more food and desperately wanting to be like the people around me and to fit in with the people that were going to school with me, I also knew that I didn't at that time, not yet, and that I was working towards it, that I needed to be kind to myself, and that this little that I had and this little that I had brought with me, it was the beginning. And eventually, I was able to get an internship at NASA as a student. This was only supposed to be a 10-week internship, but I turned it into another 10-week internship and then another one. And eventually, I was offered a job 6 months before my college graduation at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab. So, for anyone who isn't familiar, NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab is the laboratory for NASA that takes care of all of the robotic and planetary missions. So, for example, if any of you have ever heard of the Curiosity rover, or if you've heard of the Perseverance rover, if you've heard of the Voyager missions, which sent the Golden Record, or Cassini, Galileo, all of these missions are done in this lab. So for me, that was just my biggest dream, to be able to contribute to something like that, something that I grew up watching and grew up learning about. And those photos that we have of our planets and all of the things that we've learned about our solar system, most of them come from this lab. And I remember going to school and learning and seeing in my own textbooks these images of the spacecraft, and it was always credits to NASA JPL. And now to be here and to be contributing and to have been able to have worked on 5 NASA missions is one of my greatest joys. I am so proud to have been able to come from nothing, to come from my $5 that first week and my cup of noodles to a leader, an electronics and engineering leader at NASA. And you can only do that doing one thing. I really want everyone here to understand that. You can only have a change like the change I had through education. When you go and get educated, when you go and get your degree, this is what is possible. This is what you're going to be able to do and accomplish to contribute to some of the most important missions of our generation. So, shortly after that, I decide to apply for a mission to space because by now I have already learned that I am very resilient and that if I want something, it doesn't matter how hard it is, I'm going to go get it. And I applied back in 2019 for a very different mission to space. And the application process took 3 years. So in early 2022, I'm being notified that they want to interview me. And I was so nervous. I cannot even begin to explain how stressed and nervous I was during this time. I broke out in hives all over my body, and I had these weird rashes on my eyelids from the stress and how exhausted I was from not being able to sleep leading up to these interviews. I knew that I was a finalist. We were 5 left over at the end out of 7,000 that had applied from all over the world. So I understood. I am one of 5. I have a very, very good chance here, and I need to do this. I need to give this everything I have. And I was selected. I was the only person they selected for that round. So out of the 7,000 and then the 5, it was me that they selected. And in doing so, I became the first Mexican born woman in space and the second Mexican born individual in space because about 40 years ago, we had the first Mexican born person who went to space, who was Dr. Rodolfo Nerivela. For anyone who is not familiar, definitely look him up because he has a very interesting life story as well. But I realized that this mission was not about me. And yes, I went and had this experience. And yes, I'm the one that is living through that mission and continuing to work through that mission, which was a psychological mission for me. But I also understood that this was no longer about me. This was no longer for me. I have inspired and motivated so many individuals, so many of the newer generations, and an entire country. Mexico was among I believe, the top 10 countries to look up space related topics and to look up the words, can I go to space? In the year 2022. That had never happened before. And it was directly correlated to the flight that I went on and to my mission. So that is the impact that this was able to have on an entire country. And I decided that it was no longer enough for me to continue with my career and for me to have achieved it if I'm not also making sure that other people can do this as well. I know where I come from. I know how little I had, and I know how difficult it is and how difficult it can get when you feel like nobody is on your side, when you feel like you're destined to be the same type of person and have the same type of jobs that so many people for generations before us have had. But I decided to do something different. I decided to be different. I decided that my time was now. I didn't want to keep going with the life that was written out for me. And I didn't want to just let other people live that life as well if that's not what they wanted. So I've been working very hard here in the United States to advocate for students like you, to make sure that you know that these opportunities are available, to make sure that you know that people like us are out here that started just like you did and are now doing the biggest things that you could possibly imagine through education and through a lot of really hard work. And I'm also working really hard in Mexico right now. We're pushing for a constitutional reform that is going to allow us to create the base in legislation necessary to have the first Mexican made space technology, to have the first Mexican made rockets, to have the first Mexican group of astronauts for a space mission. So that is currently what I'm working towards. And I started as a McDonald's crew worker. That was my first job. And my more recent jobs have been just as exciting, just as amazing. And I can tell you that I am just as proud of my job at McDonald's as I am of my job at NASA, because we all start somewhere, and to have somebody believe in you when nobody else does, when you don't have any experience, when you don't have an education, and give you an opportunity, I am so grateful for that. And it is what I continue to strive for every day with my life. And it is why we've been working so hard along with the McDonald's team to make sure that all of you know and all of you understand that we are here for you, that these opportunities are designed and made for you, and that we really, really want you to take this seriously. Please know that. Please get educated. Just to wrap this up, I really want to mention that you don't necessarily have to go and get a 4 year degree. When we say get educated, we don't necessarily mean go to the typical college, because that might not be for you. That might not be the career choice that you're trying to go after, and that is fine. But there are so many other ways to get educated. There are trade schools, there are certificate programs, there are online programs. There are so many different ways for you to get those skills in order to be able to have better paying jobs. And that is something that is very important. And it's something that I wish I'd heard when I was younger, because all of us, I feel, constantly get pushed down the same roads and down the same direction. And the reality is that we are all different. All of us want different things and learn in a different way. So get to know yourself. What is it that you want? Forget everyone else's opinions. Forget what everyone else thinks about you or thinks that you should do or should be. And just ask yourself that question, and ask it as often as you need to, because we change constantly and we evolve every day. So ask yourself, what do I want? What do I want to do? And the answer to that is going to guide you. And I can assure you, it's going to guide you to education. Thank you so much for coming and being here with us today. We are going to still be around because we would love to chat about any questions that you might have.
Let's give a virtual round of applause for Katya. Virtual round of applause. This is the virtual round of applause, Katya. Thank you very much. I appreciate you for what you do, what you've been through, and the example that you are. One of the things that we get to hear often is we appreciate seeing somebody that looks like us, that sounds like us.
Mhm.
So we're going to have a Q&A for anybody tuning in right now or anybody that submitted a question in the chat. However, I'd like to ask you a few questions based upon what you just shared with us and from the little that I know of you from our interactions with one another. Okay? You cool with that?
Yeah,
All
cool,
right. I hope you're
perfect.
prepared. I'm going to go hardcore. I'm just kidding. It's going to be simple. Um, I'm really curious. A lot of the students that tune in sometimes are going through a rough patch, struggling. Post COVID still an issue. Where we're at with our learning. What would you tell that student that's going through that struggle right now? Because some of us are familiar with it and some of us aren't. What advice would you give them? What suggestion, recommendation would you give that student right now?
I think something that I've really learned throughout my life, now looking back at everything I lived through, there's this common question that we often get asked once we've gotten out of that struggle, right? And it's, if there's anything you could change, what would you change? Or is there, if you could go back, would you do it differently, right? And I
Right.
think that what I've realized is no, I wouldn't. I wouldn't change a single thing, because as difficult as it was, and through all of the tears and all of those hives and rashes that I had when I was so exhausted at 3 a.m., and all of those times where I felt like there's no way I'm going to be able to get through this or keep going or make rent or feed my siblings, you realize you do get through it, and you realize that it made you so strong. And any problem that comes along in my life now, it just doesn't compare because of everything that I've built. So there's no way, at the rate that I'm going, and after everything that I've learned, after everything that I'm building, and with how much I've been able to take care of my finances now as an adult, there's no way that I'll ever go back to who that person was that was struggling so much. And I mean, never say never, but I'm working
Yeah.
towards never going to that point again. But the thing is that whenever something does come up that is difficult, I know I can do it. I know I can get through that. So, something that I really like to tell students, and sometimes they get kind of um, confused about it, right? And it's, I want you to struggle. I want you to
Yeah.
struggle so much that you feel there's no way you're ever going to change your life, that you feel like there's no way that you're ever going to get out of this. And then you do. And
Yeah.
then you do get out of it. And then you do make it out of it. And then you realize that there is nothing that you can't do, that there is nothing that can hold you back because you made it through that. And now you're here. And now you have that experience and that memory to look back on, to say, if I did it when it was a million times harder, then I can do it again.
Sure. For sure. Thank you, Katya. That's important for students to know, and as a parent, parents to know as well. There's some dark times. There's some rough times. There's times where it's difficult to make any, but you have to keep on striving forward and pushing, as Katya said. You've definitely overcome a lot, and in retrospect, it's easy to answer the question, well, this is all you do. You just have to do this. But when you're in the middle of the storm, it's a little different. Well, I've been doing that for the past 2 years, and I still don't seem to be getting out of this storm. So it's good for them to see and to know that they know that. We do a lot of family engagement working with parents, and one of the challenges that I let students and parents know is that when we hold our students for so long, up until that senior year of high school, that's why when they get to college, it's like, oh wow, I get to do what I want, when I want. Nobody says anything,
Mm-hmm.
and not understanding the struggles, the responsibilities, the
Yeah,
challenges, the
exactly.
realities make life a lot more challenging. So I appreciate you for that. So I heard this number the other day, and it threw me off. $46 billion in scholarship monies are available. Billion. And yet we feel there's no money to pay for our education sometimes. So I have my stance on this, but I'd like to hear your stance on the student that kind of talks themselves out of applying, because I know I did it also, so I know from that perspective, and I also know that I applied, but not as much as I should have. What would you tell those students? Because we're asking them to apply for the Hacer scholarship, which is a wonderful opportunity. But you know as well as I know, some of them are already talking themselves through it. Should I? Shouldn't I? Do I? Don't I? Am I good enough? Do I have the grades? What would you tell those students right now?
I always take myself back to that time when I was also applying, because I was the same way at first. I didn't think it was worth it. I didn't think I would get it. And so why would I waste my time? But really, what I was afraid of was rejection. I was terrified of being told that I wasn't good enough for this. And that fear that I had of that rejection, it really only made sure that I achieved the thing I was afraid of. And I think sometimes when we're in those moments, we don't realize how illogical our thinking and reasoning is, right? You're afraid
Right.
of getting rejected, and so you don't apply, so you make sure you get rejected. Like, it doesn't make sense when we actually think about it. And
Right.
something else that I realized too, as a hiring engineer, because it's one thing when you're applying and you're on one side and you're sending in your resume or you're sending in an application for something you really, really want, and you get that rejection, right? And it can feel so bad, and we can feel so bad about ourselves and so insecure, and like maybe we don't deserve it, and maybe we aren't worth it. But I've learned not to put words in somebody else's mouth, because as a hiring engineer, I've had to reject people because I only had one position open, but I genuinely wanted to hire 5, 10, because all of them were so incredible, so amazing. And just by looking at every single one of them, I knew they are going to have brilliant careers. I just know it. And yet, these are the individuals that I'm sending that rejection letter to. And these are the individuals that are potentially going to think, wow, they don't think I'm good enough. They don't think I deserve this or that I belong. And that is not what we were thinking at all, at all. So you never know why a rejection or a certain redirection happened to you. So don't try to make up reasons because you don't know.
Right. Right. No, and I think that the important part, and part of what I inform students about is since you're on the scholarship approval committee, you don't know if you're going to get it or not. And the only way you can confirm that is by actually going through the process and understanding that you need to approach this as you do when you're in high school and you wanted to go to that party, you want to go to that dance. You were okay getting rejected once or twice by your parents. No, you can't go. Most didn't stop. Like, they'd ask again. They'd do some chores and ask again. They'd actually bring a grade up and ask again. They'd wash the car and ask again. And I want that type of drive and motivation to be behind that scholarship application process. They can do this. You have it in you. And the thing is, you don't know where you stand. Like, I'm going to give you a for instance, and this is going to lead to my next question before we move on to the audience's questions. What, sometimes we're so focused on being the winner that we miss out on being the runner-up. We miss out on coming in third. We miss out on learning, improving, growing. So here's the question. What if you wouldn't have been the one chosen, but you knew you were one of the top 5 out of those 7,000? How would you feel about that? What would that make you think about yourself now in being able to reflect back on that?
I definitely feel like that would have been extremely hard. And I do sympathize a lot as well, because those 4 people are out there. Those 4 people are people, and they had the same thoughts that I did getting this notice about being a finalist, and then went through the same interview and the same process, and yet their outcome was different. And I don't actually know who they are, but I've thought about them a lot, because that
Yeah.
could have been me. And everything that I've been doing and all of the interviews I have and everything that I've been accomplishing, I could easily see any one of them seeing that, and knowing that was also their shot. Um, and for me, I know, and I'm always very honest and vulnerable with you guys. You know that. I know it would have been very painful, and it would have been extremely difficult, and it probably would have put me in a bad place for a little bit. But I know that it also would have just lit that fire in me again. It would have lit that
Absolutely.
fire, because I could have almost touched it. It was right here. Out of all of those individuals, they saw something in me to get me to the point where I am one of 5. And again, right, we're not going to put words in people's mouths. We're not going to assume anything about their decisions unless we specifically ask them. And so that, I think, would have been one of the most important things to me, is take it as a success. Take it as I am going down the right road. I'm going down the right path, because clearly something is working. So let's keep trying, because I'm not going to stop until I get out there.
For sure. And that's what I want to make sure that everyone captures and understands. Um, I hate to be the bearer of bad news. You are not going to win every time.
Mhm.
The quicker you understand that, the better it'll be for you. I consider myself very good at failing, which has made me pretty darn good at succeeding, because I had to fail sometimes to figure things out, to get there, to understand it, to improve. So I want to make sure that we're aware of that. And while I wish we could tell you you're going to win, somebody asked this question recently. What percentage of scholarships do you think I'll win? I don't know. And that's not a question that I can answer. I wish I could, but nobody can answer that. But the one part that we can guarantee you is that, like Chu said, my business partner, I can guarantee you the ones you're not going to get, and those are the ones that you don't apply for. So
Yep.
make sure that you're doing your part and apply. Okay. All right, Katya. So let's move on to any questions the audience may have. I know that they can throw some of them up on the screen for us. Ooh. Why was space so appealing to you? Because if I heard you right, you were like 7 or 8 when you said you're going out into space. Is that correct? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was reading about recess then. I don't know about space at that age. So tell us about it, please.
It's kind of interesting because nobody else in my family, none of my siblings, my mom, like nobody, my cousins, nobody really cares about space at all, like at all. And so it's kind of interesting because I'm the only one, and then I also am the only one that has a spacey middle name.
Oh,
Excuse
did
me.
you just say it's
My middle name
spacey
is Celeste.
middleman?
Yeah, it's
Oh.
Celeste, which means of the sky.
Mhm.
And so when I was born, my mom tells me that if there were little stars or just, little planets anywhere, I would always just kind of reach towards them. It always really caught my attention. And
Uh,
as I started to grow up and I started to learn a little bit more, it really confused me. And I was that annoying kid that would always ask a million questions, and it was just, like, why this, and then they would tell you, like, but why that, and then they would tell you, but why that then? Like, you could never get to the bottom of it when it came to me. um my mom tells me that she used to have to run away from me and hide in the bathroom, and she could see my little hands under the door being like, why are you in the bathroom? Why have you been here for so long? When are you going to come out? And so I was just always so inquisitive. And for
okay.
me, the things that were the most interesting were the things that I couldn't understand, the things that were very difficult to understand. And so there were two things, and it was outer space and electricity. I studied and studied, but it just didn't make sense. And I felt like this is something that you spend your entire life trying to understand, only to not ever be able to fully do so. And so it makes sense because that is literally the career I chose, which is electrical engineering, specifically
Right.
for space systems. So I think that's a really important thing to also note, that a lot of people think that what you should do or pursue is something you're good at. But I went the other way. I said, what am I not good at? What am I not understanding, and what do I want to learn more about?
Right. Okay, that's very cool because if I understand you correctly, it intrigued you and it helped pique your interest. That's something that we recommend to students as well. If it piques your interest, you're going to keep trying, you're going to keep
Mhm.
learning, reading, asking. And the other nice thing that I want to make sure that we clarify is you were that student that asked a ton of questions, but you are also now that adult that has a ton of those answers because you kept on
Yes.
asking questions. So that's something important to know for everybody. Cool. Next question. Here we go. Do you think anyone can do what they want in life? Oh man, I got an answer for that, but you go ahead.
Mm. That's difficult. Because I'm never going to get on a stage and tell someone that they can't, because that's not up to me. I'm never going to get in front of people and look at their situations and say, you're never going to be able to. You probably have a better shot. You know,
Right.
there's no way. That is never going to be me, because we don't know how driven someone is or how far someone is willing to go to get what they want. But we also have the realities of life, right? We also have to understand that it doesn't matter how hard somebody works sometimes, and they're still going to be low income. They're still going to not have access to certain opportunities. So I could go and say, work really, really hard. And this is something that Tenoch Huerta, who is the actor in Black Panther, was really speaking out about. There's this whole concept of échale ganas, and he was saying He doesn't believe in the échale ganas because it's not always the case. How many people do we see in the streets that are working so much harder and will work so much harder than any of us, and yet they're still going to stay in that situation? And how many people do we see that are making so much money and have so many resources and so much success, but they really don't do too much in their day? So it really does depend here on your mindset, on understanding where you come from and where you want to go. I really like to say life is like a lottery. You don't get to control where you're born, who you're born to, who your parents are, how much money they have, how much money you have growing up, maybe what resources were available to you at your school that you were going to, because that's also determined by your district, how much funding your school gets, whether your school has a specific amount of classes necessary for you to even go and transfer into a college right away, or if you're going to have to make them up, right? All of these are different things that you cannot control. But what you can control is what you do have, the privileges you do have, because we all have them. Even if we don't think so, even if we think that we're at the lowest, we have certain privileges. Being able to see is a privilege. Being able to hear and to walk is a privilege. Being able to think and to reason and to get an education, regardless of where it starts and what it is, that is also a privilege, because we're seeing so many people in other countries that are getting those rights taken away from them. So I don't really like to think about necessarily, um, that question of, am I going to be able to because I started down here? Rather, it's how can I use the privileges that I do have to my advantage, so that I can keep going.
Yeah, for sure. So my answer is short and sweet. In graduate school, I had a professor that told me, practice doesn't make perfect. Just want to make sure we're aware of that. And I was like, wait a minute, that's what you're taught always as an athlete. And then I was like, well, he's absolutely right. I love to hoop. I was a baller. Practice made perfect. I may have been one of those Mexicans that made it to the NBA, except that you see how tall I am, you're like, yeah, probably not. But practice does make you better. And I want to make sure that we're aware of that. The better we understand that, the better off we're going to be. Okay. I don't know if there's another question. If there's one more question, we'll take one more, and we can move on. Oh, what does it feel like to win a scholarship? Because it sounds like you got a couple if you had everything paid for, which was very cool.
Yeah, I really like that question, because I think for a lot of us, first generation Latinos, it's not about us. It's about that phone call to our parents, letting them know what we just did. And I remember as soon as I walked out, when I received this scholarship, the first thing I did is I got into my car and I called my mom. And I said, Mommy, I have just been offered everything paid for college. And she was so confused. And I mean, the typical, like, who is doing this? Who? What? Why? Why did they do that? Those are the first questions. But then it's, explaining it's, I applied to this scholarship. It's only given to a certain amount of students a year. I had this and this and this that they really liked, and they're going to cover all of my tuition. We're not going to have to worry about rent. We're not going to have to worry about food. And then I just remember hearing on the other side of the phone just tears and tears and tears, because she knew I was going to be okay, but in turn, we were going to be okay.
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head. For a lot of us, it's not just about us. And even to this date, if you ask my mother what I studied in college for my associates, for my bachelor's, for my master's, she has zero clue. She just knows, well, just why not? He went to school. If you ask her what I do for a living, he talks. But what she does know is he's happy. And he's doing something that he loves. And for our families, I think that's part of it. They want us to be happy, better off, and doing something that we love, because we all know that a lot of our families made some very, very difficult sacrifices for us to be where we're at now. And I think that you making that call just I think hopefully inspires a student to apply in hopes of them being able to make that call, because that is a beautiful thing. Okay? Katya, thank you so much for your time, your energy, everything that you've done. You're a great inspiration to all of us. And I wish you nothing but continued success, and especially with your endeavors with our Nuestro Mexico Lindo y Querido and the space program over there. Um, I just would like to ask the audience, I'm going to put this up real quick. We have a eval for today's event. Sorry. I want to make sure that people can take a picture of it, scan it, use the URL up there. And if we can bring Katya back in, because I felt like I kicked her out real bad, real quickly, I'm sorry. We put that out there, take a picture, scan it, you see it. Katya, I want to once again thank you. I appreciate you. And I am a person that is very direct and very straightforward to a point where it's uncomfortable for folks. But you've always walked in very humble, very respectful, and I think it's mad cool when you get to walk in with your NASA jacket on. And I was like, I think that's her. I'm like, what? Give it away. And immediately students wanted to take pictures, and you were game for that. And I respect that a lot. And I'm so happy that McDonald's was able to partner with you for the Hacer Scholarship this year. And again, I wish you continued success. And thank you very much for blessing us with your presence, your wisdom, and your story. Again, virtual applause for Katya. Virtual applause for everybody in attendance. We would like to thank you and again encourage you to apply for that Hacer Scholarship. The McDonald's National Hacer Scholarship is available to you all. That deadline is really quick. Okay, it's right around the corner. Make sure that you do your part. Thank you very much for tuning in, for sharing, for watching, sharing this in your classroom, sharing it with the parent, sharing it with the student. We thank you all, and we wish you nothing but continued success. Thank you very much. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.